What's going on, everyone? John Matrix here. Hope you're all having yourselves a wonderful day. We're going to be jumping into the 40k universe here with Arbiter Ian. We recently did a video on the Votan, so we're doing a follow-up video by Arbiter Ian. What are the squats now? New lore from Halls of the Ancients, Warhammer 40k Necromunda lore. I know the squats, you know, the Votan were a thing in the 40k universe back in the day, and they kind of got written out, and now they're brought back. So I'm interested to hear, you know, from Arbiter Ian's kind of perspective here, kind of the history of that, and you know what they kind of were back in the day, and obviously, you know, what his take on what they're going to, I guess, become, or how they're going to be written back into things. Anyway, so looking forward to this. Links will be down below as always in the description to the original video without my commentary and reaction into Arbiter Ian's channel. So please do me a favor, go over there, and if you enjoy this video as we go through it, give it a like, and be sure to hit that sub button on Arbiter Ian's channel if you enjoy 40k content he puts out. If you'd like to join us as I do these reactions live like I'm doing right now with my YouTube members, we'd love to have you guys come in here and hang out and join our discussions. There is a join button underneath the video, as well as the link you know, in the description. So yeah, if you've been around the channel for a while and want to decide you want to take your sport to the next level, take a look at the YouTube membership benefits and tiers that I offer. See if any of that would have any interest for you. But regardless, let's jump into the video here. Boop, boop.
Hi gang, the hardy space dwarves of Warhammer 40k, the SQUATS, have gone through a few revisions over the years. A playable army in the very first edition of the game, then languishing nowhere for 20 years before returning as a couple of different things. But now the Necromunda Halls of the Ancients book is with us, and that includes some details on how these hardy miners came to be living in the Imperium. So let's delve into the depths of the book and find out the new lore for the SQUATS.
From the last video I watched, I believe it was from Scholar's Lore going over the Votan. They sound like a race, honestly, I would be interested in. They were basically kind of an offshoot of humanity from you know, during the Dark Age of humanity period. They went towards the galactic core where the gravity is heavier. They, through technology and cloning and various things, adjusted to that higher, you know, level of gravity. But their technology is still extremely advanced. They might not be at that kind of Dark Age of humanity technology levels, but they're still pretty up there. They still have active STCs that are working for them, even though they might be kind of malfunctioning, I guess. So I'm interested to learn more about them, and they sound like they would be a race that I could potentially be interested in playing in the tabletop at some point in time.
SQUATS are an abhuman strain that has had a place in the world of Warhammer 40k since its very beginnings. Originally hardy miners and pioneers whose brotherhood and guild forces inhabited the worlds of the galactic core and sometimes allied with the Imperium. They were a playable army in the very first editions of 40k, but by the mid-90s, they sort of fell out of the game, a casualty of 40k trying to make itself less like fantasy in space, and they were rarely mentioned or really developed.
Which is kind of funny, because I feel like they've gone back around to really making it more fantasy in space. Like, they've done a very good job of, in 40k, meshing a lot of genres together with blending sci-fi and fantasy and, you know, all these things.
Were still there, still in the galaxy. They just weren't a prominent or playable faction for a long time, a forgotten thread of 40k. But then recently the SQUATS, or at least something resembling them, have returned. First as the odd squat character inhabiting the world of Necromunda, and then as the Leagues of Votan, 40k's newest sort of alien faction. But the links between these two things, the SQUATS and the Leagues of Votan, and the place of SQUATS in the Imperium, how one of those is related to the other, has never been revealed until now. The new Necromunda book goes into a fair amount of detail on squats in general, where they came from, their place in the Imperium of Man, and how they turned from the kinfolk of the Leagues into the abhuman squats of the Imperium. The book obviously focuses mostly on the Ironhead squats of Necromunda, but their story, how they bargained for a place on the planet and cannily kept the Imperials in their debt for 10,000 years, is a great example not only of what squats are now, but also how they can be found all across the Imperium. The Ironhead squats are a ridiculously powerful faction on Necromunda, but just like everything in 40k, the story of squat settlement on the planet starts 10,000 years before.
That's some dope looking like battle armor there. I wonder if this is some kind of like Votan dreadnought or something.
And to tell their story, we have
Terminator
to start
armor
with the Leagues. The Leagues of Votan are the latest incarnation of space dwarves in 40k, a thematic continuation of a really old bit of Warhammer 40k lore that was never really expanded on, the myth of the Men of Stone. I have a video that goes into a bit more detail on it there. But millennia ago, at the dawn of the dark age of technology, humanity created a species of engineered human designed to exploit the wealth of the galactic core. These new abhumans became short, powerful, and hardy, possessed of a keen eye for mineral and resource wealth, and crucially, had dimmer and more resilient souls so as to be safer when traversing the warp. And their civilization was regulated by advanced AI that became known as Votan, vast data cores that, as well as processing and guarding the information that the fleets discovered, were also responsible for creating new individuals. The abhumans would be clones, but not identical clones. Each of them was built from a vast repository of diverse genetic data so that the explorers would have a huge range of skills and aptitudes. In time, these explorers effectively colonized the galactic core, becoming estranged and forgotten by the rest of humanity over the intervening millennia. Their leagues continued to build their strength, mining for resources and plundering the wealth of the galaxy in the galactic core, and fighting wars of conquest against, well, anyone who had stuff they needed. For the Leagues consider the resources of the galaxy their ancestor-given right to exploit, even if someone else is currently living on them. The Imperial opinion on the Leagues varies. The kin of the Leagues are sometimes seen by Imperials as abhumans just like ratlings or ogrins, a stable mutation of humanity that should still be looked down on as unfortunate or unclean compared to baseline humans, but not that bad. Their technology, though human in origin, is often considered heretical by the adepts of the Mechanicus, and the Leagues try and keep quiet that it makes use of artificial intelligence, and they...
Right, exactly, that's what I was going to say. Like, a lot of their stuff actually still has AI in it. They actually have AI constructs that are sentient. So, yeah, it would not go very well if the mechanic is found out.
certainly deviate in terms of their religion. The Leagues venerate their ancestor cores, the Votan, and the Emperor of Mankind means nothing to them. Because of this, they're sometimes considered little more than aliens, another form of Xenos, having diverged so far from humanity over the years. The Imperium's opinion on what the Leagues are seems to vary depending on their contact and where in the galaxy they are. But while the greater amount of the Leagues of Votan have very little contact with the Imperium anyway, they are still close enough to humanity for members of the kin to sometimes find themselves upon Imperial worlds, maybe even living there, amongst humans for generations. And Necromunda is just one example of that. Within the Imperium, the kinfolk of the Leagues of Votan, at least those who have deviated enough from their origins to adapt to life amongst humanity, are known as SQUATS. Given the status of abhumans within the Imperium, this can sometimes be considered a slur, a denigrating term, but it's one that in some areas...
That in the previous video, that's what I had wondered. I wondered if SQUATS was considered a derogatory term for them, and if you were to go up to one of them and call them a squat, you know, would shit go down essentially?
areas the kinfolk have adopted for themselves. Squats in the Imperium can find employment in a number of fields. Their technical expertise and unique adaptations serve them well on the crew of freighters and starships, at least those that don't have a very strong mechanicus presence, and their general hardiness can see them serve as security or as bounty hunters, or working in workshops and repair yards. Some are only called that name, squats, by the Imperials. They still think of themselves as kin of the Leagues, but others have been in the Imperium so long that they've ceased to identify with the Votan at all. The origin of the squats of Necromunda are clouded in 10,000 years of history, like everything in 40k, but it's clear that their story starts with the Votan.
It's interesting that some have lived in the Imperium long enough to where, yeah, they don't really consider themselves part of the Votan anymore. They just consider themselves part of the Imperium. I also wonder, you know, obviously through... I would assume that they would start families, you know, with potentially regular humans, right? Like, and how that would work out with, you know, genetic traits being passed down. Would we start seeing more hardier humans, you know, kind of like an in-between a Votan and a normal human, some that gain the best traits of both starting to emerge, having humans that are a little bit more resilient and strong and being able to, you know, get a lot of the positive traits that the Votan had along with the positive traits that humanity had. And from what I understand of the Votan, like, there are no real psychers, like, or if there are, they're extremely rare. So could that also be something? Could they get, like, could you have a psyker that is physically you know, naturally stronger and getting those kind of benefits from the Votan, but also getting the psyker benefits from humanity? That'd be interesting.
Particularly a league known as the Confederation of Urlish around the early 31st millennium, as the Imperium was recovering from the civil war that was the Horus Heresy. The Imperium had discovered Necromunda during the Great Crusade, when it was known as Irenaeus Prime, an ancient pre-strife mining and manufacturing colony that had become the capital of a small stellar empire known as the Irenaeus Continuity. This was facilitated by a series of ancient Xenos warp gates that allowed swift travel between its systems. Initially, the tech nobility of Irenaeus refused to bow to the Imperium, and they were brought into compliance by force, the Imperial Fist Legion conquering the outlying planets within months and forcing the core worlds to surrender. But shortly after they did, the worlds of the continuity came under attack by a mysterious Xenos force who appeared from those gates to ravage the systems. The Imperial Fists pulled their defenses back to the core world, protecting only what they knew they could hold and destroying the warp gates to limit the aliens' incursions. But by the time the Xenos threat disappeared, the old Irenaeus continuity was no more. All but one of its worlds had been destroyed, and the remaining one, Irenaeus Prime, was changed forever, a wasteland with only the shattered remains of hives standing amidst the wreckage. Necromunda. And then the Horus Heresy happened, and the shattered hives were drained further to provide regiments for the Imperial army. By the time the war was over, the planet was a shadow of its former self. Great resources and ancient technology still remained, buried amid the ash and wreckage, but the infrastructure of the planet was devastated. It would take centuries to rebuild to a point where it could once again exploit those riches. And it was here that Oryth Ioni, Carl of the Confederation of Urlish, saw an opportunity.
I mean, I could see how that could be a very fascinating setting for stories in the 40k universe, right? This, like, planet that has, you know, like you said, a lot of advanced lost technologies because of that little the war that had happened before the heresy, and then the heresy, and the planet essentially just being drained of all the resources and all of the people there essentially abandoned. And then now the Horus heresy is kind of over, people going back there at being resettled, and then refining all the various technologies and, you know, repopulating, getting hive cities going. Like, I could see that being a fascinating, setting for various stories.
Federation of Erlish was a league of solar miners and void prospectors with a reputation in kin society for their unhealthy interest in human affairs and for the recklessness of their leader. According to legend, Oryth first heard of Necromunda when a rival Carl bet her that even her skilled miners couldn't squeeze a profit from such a dead world. Ever one to accept a challenge, Oryth set her fleet in motion. The 13 great bastion craft of the Confederation embarked on a colossal journey, far from their homes in the galactic core, battling pirates and void monsters, until at last they arrived in the Necromundan system to find it garrisoned with a war-weary Imperial Navy fleet, fresh from the wars of the Heresy. In the years since, numerous Xenos raiders had attempted to plunder the world, and
That's
the Imperial
awesome, Art. I
crews
like
initially just thought this was another, but Oryth Ionai talked them down, travelling alone to their capital ship and persuading them to grant her an audience with the rulers of the planet. Such was her confidence and skill at negotiation that Ionai ended up in Hive Primus itself, in a fateful meeting with Lord Vargas, the planetary governor of Necromunda, and First Captain Agados, commander of the Imperial Fist garrison that still protected it, and together they signed the first Great Charter. The Imperials of Necromunda remember this as the time that the great Lord Vargas bound the SQUATS forever to their service. Vargas was a practical man, a veteran of the Heresy, and he saw the arrival of the kin as an opportunity to hasten the rebuilding of the planet. Holding off delegations from the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Administratum as long as he could, he made sure that the inventors and engineers of the SQUATS would be a boon.
Wouldn't that be considered like treason if he if you were found out, right, that he purposely did that, purposely like was trying to delay the Mechanicus and other forces so that SQUATS could come in there and he could benefit from them,
Stratum as long as he could, he made sure that the inventors and engineers of the SQUATS would be a boon to industry, their service invaluable in remaking the hives and rediscovering the forgotten technology of Arenaeus. By binding the SQUATS to the planet, Lord Vargas would be remembered as the man who rebuilt Necromunda. For the SQUATS, the first charter is remembered as the crowning achievement of the canny Oryth Ionai, whose negotiations secured land rights to an imperial world she had only that day set foot on. The SQUATS were granted mining rights to vast tracts of the Ash Wastes. According to their histories, the desperate Imperials acquiesced to all of Ionai's demands, so badly did they need the skills of the kin. Whatever the truth.
Interesting. So it's funny how there's two different histories from that. From the Imperial side of things, the governor essentially, was viewed as the man who was able to rebuild and kind of reconquer Necromunda and set it back on the map. But then from the Votan's perspective, their take on it is that, their leader was able to get the Imperium to bend to all of their demands and were able to then go in and essentially have free reign over anything they found and mined there.
Contracts were signed and the kinfolk of the Confederation set to work. 12 of the vast Bastion ships were landed in the wastes, stripped down until they became the 12 great holdfasts of the squat mining clans, though one clan, the 13th clan, are known to have rejected the charter and disappeared back into the void. Their great ancestor core, the Votan of the Confederation, was landed in one of the holdfasts and started adapting the biology of the kin to better survive in the harsh ash wastes. And once the charters were signed, the engineers of the Erlish went to work.
I'm sure the Mechanicus would love to get their hands on that. On the Votan they landed there on the planet that began readapting them. I'm sure the Mechanicus would love to get their hands on that.
Builders doubled the size of Hive Primus in their first millennia on the planet, constructed the Great Ash Road and the Necromagnium underway that linked the ancient hives, and even constructed thousands of atmospheric processors to stabilize the climate. Ionai herself made numerous deals with hive lords, nobles, outlanders, and clanners, a network of contracts and obligations known today as the Iron Debt, that made sure that the Imperials would be dependent on her people for millennia to come. And over the centuries, they became an integral part of the world, the kin of the Confederation of Urlish spreading through the ash wastes and the underways of the planet, and slowly becoming the Ironhead Squats of Necromunda. Squat society on Necromunda is still overwhelmingly controlled by the 12 ancient Ironhead mining clans, mostly the same 12 that landed their holdfasts in the ash wastes 10 millennia ago. Core to the culture and beliefs of each of the clans is their Great Charter, the ancient documents that not only grant the Squats the status of natives of the planet, but also defines their clan's claim and mining rights. The holder of the Charter is the Charter Lord, the leader of each clan, but every squat born to the clan has the right to add their name to the charter once they come of age, and the lords of the clans may grant individual squats higher stakes, creating drillkin or charter masters. In this way, the charter also serves as a record of the lineage and history of the clan, binding the squats to a legacy started millennia ago by their ancestors. And reverence of one's ancestors is a key part of squat culture,
Of course.
likely derived from the kinfolk reverence for their ancestor cores, the Votan. But for the squats of Necromunda, this reverence for their forebears has only grown in recent millennia since the tragic loss of their own core. Around the 36th millennium, the ancient Votan ancestor core of the Confederation was lost in a series of earthquakes caused by the passing of the dark orb Somnus close to the world. The ancestor core, originally stored within the Anglish holdfast, and that had been dutifully creating and modifying the clone skeins of the kin of Necromunda, keeping the records of the clans and providing solutions to their technical problems, was lost, falling deep into the underearth of the planet. Since then, the squats have resorted to more traditional means of maintaining their numbers, which has led to an upsurge in regard for familial ancestry. Indeed, while any prospective Charter Lord or Charter Master must prove their worth in the eyes of their peers, hereditary ranks are now quite common amongst the squats. The Graven Path, the search for the lost ancestor core, is a calling that a lot of elder squats find appealing, dedicating their final years to exploring the underearth in search of the lost knowledge of their past. Over the millennia, the fortunes of those original 12 clans has shifted somewhat, with some enduring the ages and others splitting to form new ones. The Anglish clan is the most numerous clan in the western hemisphere of the planet. Their holdfast sited on Essos Peak at the edge of the Great Equatorial Wastes, near to many of the largest hive cities. In squat society, they're seen as the spiritual successors to Oryth Ionai, close to the hivers to an extent that many clans would be uncomfortable with. They have numerous dealings with hive organizations, trading in Trazior, Primus, and the Minerva cluster, and holding long-term contracts with the Guild of Coin and houses Orlok and Goliath, and this has made them the richest of the clans, and the most well-known. To many hivers, the Anglish and the Ironhead squats are one and the same, the humans hardly aware that there are other clans out there. The Tapfakit mining clan, by contrast, keep to the old ways, and their dealings and income come from one of the oldest structures built by the squats, the Necromagnium underway that runs underneath the equatorial spine and connects the two hemispheres of the planet.
That sounds... I mean, I don't know a lot about Warhammer Fantasy, other than just, you know, stuff that I've learned from playing the Total War Warhammer games, but that sounds very much like the dwarves in fantasy. They have like their own underway that they can traverse through and whatnot, so interesting.
Underway is one of the great symbols of squat engineering craft, and the Tapfakit are renowned for their innovation, their graven seal lying on many of the most ancient structures on the planet. As an enduring symbol of this, their holdfast lies across the underway like a gate, all traffic passing through its carved foundations, which allows the Tapfakit to extract a hefty toll from the merchants that are dependent on it. The Svardhold clan are a warlike clan whose holdfast stands atop the ruins of the Calvaria hive cluster known as the Skull. Millennia ago, the Svardhold joined the Imperium in repelling an orc invasion of Necromunda centered on Calvaria, and ever since, the Svardhold Svardhol have been famed for the quality of their warriors and weapons. The area
sounds very Norse Svartol, you know?
around the skull is still haunted by monsters and twisted beasts, and all squats of the clan complete tours in the clan militia to keep them at bay. The Skragfrid clan keep their holdfast on the edge of the spoil, the vast rubbish heap that covers thousands of square kilometers of the surface of the planet and is prized as a source of ancient chemical and mineral wealth. The Skragfrid are master explorers and prospectors, their expeditions spreading across the surface of the planet, even as far as the southern ash pole, and even off-world. Skragfrid militia have even been known to serve alongside Necromundan Imperial Guard regiments off-world. Their maps, including maps of the regions around the spoil, are greatly prized. These first four clans are the most well-known amongst the hivers of the planet. Their holdfasts all situated around or near the equatorial spine and close to the center of power, but other clans tried their luck in more exotic locations, extracting profit from the stranger parts of the planet. The Helmaeth mining clan harvests the chemical wealth of Necromunda's poisoned oceans, their holdfast setting down at the bottom of one of the planet's massive sump seas.
I mean, again, their core has adapted them to the planet, so I'd assume that means it's probably not that big of a deal for them, but the idea of harvesting chemicals out of something called the poison sea doesn't sound like that great of a life. You know what I mean?
From there, their submersible craft have traveled through the veins of the planet, through underground rivers and vast underground oceans, sometimes even emerging in the underhives of the hive cities, and as well as extracting the riches of the deeps, their clan are feared as pirates and smugglers. The Snorag went even deeper. Considered strange and insular, the Snorag made their home deep in the maze of caverns and ancient mines known as the Underearth, a lightless realm filled with lost mineral wealth and horrific creatures. Despite being relatively reclusive, the Snorag still maintain trade links with the humans and the other squat clans of the planet, though none of those know where their holdfast lies. The Trocken clan set their ship down in the northern reaches of Necromunda, near to many failed hives, seeing those as potential sources of income, and in the millennia since, the clan has become expert at stripping the bones of the dead hives for resources. Their prospecting parties and land trains venture into some of the most dangerous parts of the planet in search of plunder, areas where even the Ash Waste nomads fear to set foot. After the fall of House Aranthus and Hive Mortis, the Trocken were some of the first to move in, eventually establishing an alliance with House Escher to exploit the dead hive. And the Vosinki never landed their holdfast at all. Instead, their great bastion ship was converted into an atmospheric sky mining craft, and the clan dedicated themselves to harvesting chems from the toxic winds of the planet.
So they just have this flotilla of ships that just fly around in the atmosphere, sucking up, chemicals out of the atmosphere to produce and create things for. Interesting.
Prospecting parties travel across Necromunda, their sky mining rigs harvesting the chemical dust from storms that gather around its peaks. And then the last four clans are even more mysterious, rarely seen by outsiders. And of course, there are still rumours of the fate of the ancient 13th clan, but even more clans than those have arisen over the years. Individual charter masters splitting with their old clan might take their piece of the charter and set out with bands of followers to exploit some new opportunity. Some of those...
going back to this picture right here, I don't know why, but it if you've ever seen that kind of meme World War II picture of a Tyrannosaurus Rex holding a machine gun, storming a beach. Whatever reason, it just gives me those vibes. This picture just reminds me of that. Anyway.
And set out with bands of followers to exploit some new opportunity. Some of those splinter clans have grown almost as powerful as the originals. Clan Rygoth are famed for their weaponsmithery, far in excess of their old compatriots in Tapfakit. But the most famous recent example of this is Clan Jardlan, famously founded by Rygor Jardlan during a disagreement with his charter lords in Clan Svardhol over drill bits. Jardlan and his followers eventually founded their new hold on the outskirts of Hive Secundus, prospering in the wasteland around the Hive for 1,000 years. Unfortunately, with the fall of Hive Secundus to Genestealer invaders, Jardlan found itself under attack, and after decades of warfare in the underways of the planet, the holdfast was eventually overrun. Only recently has the descendant of the last Charter Lord, Orin Grimdark, risen to ownership of the Hive, repopulating its ruins with his own small band of followers. Outside the necessities of trade, the Ironhead squats of the clans rarely interact with outsiders, content to exploit the riches of the wasteland. The squats are a culture apart. While they can speak the languages of the Hivers, their native language is known as the Graven Tongue, the language their contracts and charters are laid down.
Graven Tongue.
Their people work their claims for their own profit and that of the clan as miners, excavators, engineers and craftsmen, often deep beneath the earth and far from any contact with those outside the clan. Even the great councils of stone, the moots where the clan lords of the greatest clans meet, are incredibly rare, with most clans just keeping to their own affairs. When travellers in the wastes do encounter squats, it's often part of a vast prospecting expedition. Squat prospector teams travel in vast convoys of armoured vehicles known as land trains, a dozen or more giant tracked platforms connected together to traverse the wastes. These land trains are large settlements on their own, often circled into vast lagers when promising seams are found. And from the
I mean, it seems like they're pretty nomadic. Most of the clans just travel around. I mean, they've settled in certain areas, but at the same time still travel through a lot of different areas through the planet to trade their goods, etc.
main body of the train, smaller armoured vehicles spread out in search of the next opportunity. Termite mining vehicles are deployed into the crust of the planet. Scalvian explorators trace the dunes, searching out new prospects,
cool
surrounded by swift outriders on Svenatar scout trikes. The land trains are heavily armed and armoured, the drillkin who crew them ever ready to fight off raiders and attacking beasts.
Looks like something Batman
many of
would
the
have.
clans have a long-standing grudge against the Ash Waste Nomads, the other inhabitants of the wasteland, who are often enraged by the squats' exploitation of their ancient homelands. The drillkin of the squats have adapted much of their equipment from the void mining technology used by their ancestors. Exosuits, derived originally from armoured void suits, are common in the clans, equipped for both deep core mining and close quarters combat in the tunnels of the Underearth. And these are supported by even larger suits, like the Vartijan Exo Driller, originally invented by the Svardhol clan. Another throwback to their ancestors in the leagues is the use of techmites, robotic companions with limited decision-making capabilities that can be specialized for navigation, excavation, or surveying. The wasteland mining clans of the Ironheads comprise almost all the squats of Necromunda, but not all of them. Just like in the rest of the Imperium, not every squat on the planet is a member of the clans. Over the millennia, some squats have turned their backs on the traditions, or found their families expelled from the holdfasts, or just sat out on their own. These squats are collectively known as the Charterless, and they exist outside the rules of House and Hive. Some set up as mercenaries or craftsmen, but others have formed organizations that turn a profit amongst the Hive cities. In Hive Primus,
Charterless become their own charter.
the Masters of the Pit mine the Hive bottom near Dust Falls, and the Shalefist miners work closely with the prospecting teams of House Orlok. Neither are beholden to any clan structure. Other squats have travelled to Necromunda from off-world in the intervening years, working on spacecraft or in the giant docking spires of the Hives. These squats might come from other Imperial settlements or as renegades from the Leagues, and some have even moved down from the Underhive, off-world squats setting up as bounty hunters or weaponsmiths. Once again, like back in the 80s when they were first introduced, it seems that there are plenty of reasons you might find lone squats or small enclaves of them across the Imperium, whether they're happy to use that term or not. They might be small enterprises or lone individuals, but the situation on Necromunda is just one example of how powerful the technical expertise and the knowledge of the ancient leagues can become when dedicated to the service of the Imperium. Who's to say similar setups don't exist across the galaxy?
True.
Thanks for watching.
Sure. All right.
And if you'd like more videos...
All right. Well, there we go. There we go. That was What Are the Squats Now? New lore from Halls of the Ancients, Warhammer 40k Necromunda lore by Arbiter Ian. Links will be down below in the description as always to the original video about my commentary and reaction and to Arbiter Ian's channel. It's interesting, you know, just the overall and general lore and setting of Necromunda. You know, the whole it was a planet that I think was what's I guess conquered by the Iron Fists back before the heresy. There were warp gates there from what they considered a Xenos race at the time. I would assume it was the Votann. Votann warped back in, took a bunch of stuff back, and then left. Then the heresy happened, and so the planet kind of basically became abandoned. Then once the heresy ended, the Imperium came back in, retake it, and the whole kind of dichotomy history, I guess you could say, I don't know if that's the proper word, but the different history that the Imperium has versus the Votann. You know, the history of the Imperium is that this governor came back in and was the one who, you know, negotiated terms to recreate Necromunda and make it great again, whereas it's on the Votann side, they're the ones that kind of, you know, bent the Imperium to their will to give them the rights to the planet to mine whatever they want to, etc. And you know how that's kind of gotten all the various clans there to go in and seek their riches. Also interesting that a lot of the Votann through generations have kind of reintegrated with the Imperium. And again, one of my questions kind of really was like, what does that do? I would assume there would be certain instances where, you know, a Votann squat would, you know, start a family with, you know, a normal human potentially. I'm sure that could potentially happen if they were genetically compatible. Then what would happen, you know? But a psyker could you get kind of like a mixed breed of human and Votann that could get the best of both, potentially even psyker abilities, you know, etc., etc. So interesting stuff, interesting lore. So I'm interested to continue to learn more about the Votann, and also I guess, you know, some more Necromunda lore. So I guess we'll see what Games Workshop has in store for them going forward. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, consider leaving a like and a subs. It helps me and the channel grow. If you'd like to join us as I do these reactions live with my YouTube members, there is a join button underneath the video, as well as a link in the description. So yeah, if you've been around the channel for a while, decided you might want to take your sport to the next level, take a look at those, see if any of that has any interest for you. Regardless, thank you for watching. Hope you had a wonderful day. See you on the next one.